Hey everyone, my name is Abhi and I'm going to present my final project to you. For my final project, I have decided to take real estate transactions and decryptify them. Basically, just because those words themselves are really hard to understand, not to mention the actual transaction, I wanted to use all of that, kind of synthesize it down into something that's really easy to understand and therefore present it to anyone who might be interested in them. As for context, I am a senior at NYU, on top of which I run a startup called Flower Agent. At Flower Agent, we do exactly this. Because there are many redundant tasks in a real estate transaction, we're able to automate a lot of them, therefore reducing the time, cost in a real estate transaction, and also simplifying it for anyone who is part of it. I work on Flower Agent with my partner Rashid, who is not working on my senior project with me. So let's begin. Basically, from start to finish, there's you who wants to buy a house or you want to get to a house. So at the start, you have a couple of options. You can either lease a house, which another word for is renting, and this is something a lot more of you are familiar with because you might be leasing a house right now, where you might look up a house on Zillow or Street Easy. You might find an agent, you give them a call, or you might find a building, and you might go to the landlord, and you might put down a security deposit, and they're like, okay, you can move it on this date, and you do so, and then the simple is really easy. However, the problem with leasing is that it's not necessarily the best financial decision because the money that you're putting towards rent is money that is kind of evaporating. This money doesn't go towards anything for your perspective, and it's just a cost that is just going to either stay the same or even increase because of inflation, and it's money that you're probably never going to see again. The alternative is buying a house, which means that you now have ownership of the house. The money that you're putting towards the house allows you to build up ownership of the house, and at the end of it, either you have a full house that you can live for and you never have to pay for again, or you may choose to sell this house at any point of the process and hopefully you make a profit, on which basically means that not only have you gotten back the money that you've been spending on paying for the house, but you might even be able to make money that you never thought of making before. So rather than focusing on the leasing process, I want to talk about the buying process, which is something a lot less people are familiar with. All of this begins with the search process. Now, you could search for houses manually. This could mean literally walking through New York City, tapping on each door and seeing if any available units are present or if any of the house owners are willing to sell the house. Now, this is something probably no one does. So a simpler solution is to use something like Zillow or Street Easy, where you can basically Google search your requirements as to maybe you want a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Brooklyn, and this is your budget, and you're able to generate a list of houses that you would potentially want to stay at. Another option that you want to consider is going through an agent. Now, maybe the search process doesn't necessarily seem like it needs an agent involved, but this was what agents used to provide a lot of value in, and their role has shifted over the past couple of years. However, I'll continue to stress why an agent might be a really good decision for you to make as we go through the rest of the process. In talking about agents, there have been a couple of new brokerages or agencies that provide you better customer service and provide you better tools so you are more involved in the entire process. One of the biggest names out there right now is Compass. In fact, they are headquartered in New York City on 14th Street near Union Square, so you might have seen their flyers all around campus or up to Union Square. And they have raised a lot of money and are doing a lot to improve this process. There are also other types of startups and tools that have been trying to automate this entire process. So on top of just being able to search for a house, Open Listings is an interesting startup that's also taking the offers process and the negotiation process are parts of it, and is trying to automate it and simplify it so that you as the buyer will not have to pay any or you can pay a reduced agent's fees, and in the end you save a lot of money. This is also a really interesting option. They recently got acquired by Open Door, and Open Door is something that represents the selling side, and that's not something I'm going to cover in this conversation just because it's out of the scope, but that was also a really big progression in the real estate tech space. So let's just say you have gone with one of these options. The next thing you'll be thinking about is financing. Unless you are one of the 0.01% of the population that just has so much money in their bank account that is able to buy a house in New York City straight up, most of you are going to need to look for a way to buy this house on top of the money that you're making. Now you could get a mortgage. So this is where banks come in. Most banks are able to provide mortgages, which basically are really long loans. Over the next 5 to 10 to 30 years, you're going to take out a loan of a huge sum, probably ranging between $500 to a couple $1,000,000 in New York City to buy a home. Now, while this is a pretty standard option, and honestly, majority of people still go through this option, there have been new alternatives that are coming out, both because this mortgage process is slightly complicated and also because it's slightly inflexible. There is Better.com. Better is, as they call themselves, a better mortgage. All this process that you would have to do with a traditional bank, Better is able to do that online. Now you can just go on to Better.com, apply for a mortgage, put in your financials, and they'll approve you for a loan. If you're approved for a loan, you'll be able to really easily keep track of your payments, and you'll be able to proceed with the rest of the process. Now, that is really, really cool, and they've been really, really successful. An alternative is these new types of companies called Zero Down and Divvy Homes, and they focus on home affordability and flexibility in home ownership. Basically, they're trying to increase the opportunity for non-traditional home owners to be able to own a home. And in fact, this is actually really, really cool because we fall in this customer segment. What Zero Down and Divvy Homes do is they buy the home for you, and over time they give you back the equity on the home as you pay them money. What this means is, for example, very specifically with Zero Down, they don't have a down payment, which is kind of really important if you're trying to get a mortgage. Most mortgages don't let you just walk up to them and take $1 million from them. You need to put in ranging from 5 to 10 to 20% of that value of the home before they're able to finance the rest of it. This means that on $1 million home, you need to have at least $200,000 saved up before you can loan the $800,000 to get that home. To get to $200,000 in saving in New York City is kind of hard, and that means that at least for the first 2 to 5 years of your working adulthood, you're probably not going to be able to buy a home, and that means that you're going to have to lease, which means that you're probably wasting that money. Zero Down says, okay, I totally got that. I'm going to let you buy the home. I'm going to front the money. I'm going to make you pay to me directly over time. And over the next 2 to 5 years, you can build up equity in the home. If you so wish to get a mortgage at the end of this period, we will give you back the money that you have paid us. You can use that money for a down payment, go get a mortgage, and you can buy the home back from us. The price that you buy the home is going to be the same price that you had bought the home. And so this is a really great option. And at any point between the 2 to 5 years, if you wish to drop out, you can just get back the money that they had given you, that you had given to them, and move on with your life. It's really amazing. So Divvy Homes, Zero Down focuses on larger markets like New York City. Well, they are not in New York City yet, but they're focusing on San Francisco, where the average price of a home is from $700,000 to $1.5 million. Divvy Home is trying to do the same thing in much smaller markets like Texas or Kentucky or Arizona, where the costs of home are ranging between $150,000 to $300,000. Board is an interesting mortgage company. They're really, really new, but they're really, really cool. What they do is basically they focus on speeding up the process, where the mortgages or better.com take a really long while to give you the actual money because of the long financing process. Bard is going to qualify you really, really quickly and give you money immediately within the next 2-3 days. With that money, you can go make a really good offer to your seller, get the home, and over the next week, Bard will actually help you move on from that cash offer to a mortgage. So again, increasing the opportunity and flexibility in being able to purchase a home. Okay, so now you know the home that you want. You have the money to buy this home. You want to submit an offer. This is something that is a really complicated process. A lot of documents are involved, a lot of negotiation, a lot of back and forth, because you want to make sure that you get the best deal possible and you're not being scammed in this entire process. Let's also keep in mind that for most people, a home is probably the largest investment they're going to make. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars and going up to like millions of dollars. So most people want to make sure that they're getting a good deal and they're able to stay involved in the process and get everything that they're looking for. This is something where usually most of the agents do the work, just because they are much more familiar with the process, they're much more familiar with different neighborhoods, the standard deals, what they can actually get out of a home, and therefore this is kind of where an agent's advisement is kind of really, really good. After we have submitted an offer and the seller has accepted it, money moves into escrow. Escrow is basically a third party that says, okay, give me the money. I'm going to hold on to it to make sure that, you do have the money and that the seller will receive it once everything goes through. And when everything does indeed go through, I'm going to distribute the money to the respective places. So this means maybe paying the agents for their fees or paying the seller for the rest of the home. So this is kind of what I call the boring stuff, just because there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth, a lot of negotiation, and honestly it's quite complicated, and this ends up taking a lot of time. And this is probably why you'll end up going with an agent, at least as a first-time home buyer, just because to understand this stuff, it takes a really long while. Like, for example, I have been studying real estate transactions for almost a year now, and there is still something new that I learn every day. And if you are just trying to be as quick as possible and make the best financial decision for yourself, probably going with an agent isn't a terrible idea. So, moving to the last bit of the real estate transaction process, there is the title and title insurance process. So what is a title? Because we don't inscribe our names onto the homes that we own, home ownership is recorded on a title. Title is basically a document that says Abhi owns a home in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, a really cool hip home on like 7 Fulton Street, right? And when I sell that home to you, maybe your name is John, the title will then record that Abhi has sold that home to John, and now John owns the home on 7 Fulton in Williamsburg. On top of title, which is the document that shows ownership itself, there's title insurance that basically foolproofs the buyer in the future in the case of any disputes. This basically means that if I sell the home to you, John, and you now own the home, when you're trying to sell the home in the future, your new buyer, who might be Catherine, might feel that you actually lied and this home is not actually owned by you, it's owned by someone else, then Catherine has the right to sue you. And when Catherine does so, you want to make sure that you have insurance. That's what title insurance provides. Now, this is kind of counterintuitive. A lot of people actually say that title insurance is a scam, and this is something that has been a really hot topic for the real estate and real estate tech space, and there haven't really been that many disruptions just yet. For example, your standard procedure would be to go to one of the big underwriters. Underwriters are people who basically assess the risk and therefore give you an insurance rate. You also have underwriters in car insurance and life insurance and so on. Very specifically with title insurance, Chicago Insurance is a really huge name. They have been across the country for over 100 years, and this is kind of the standard traditional process. Also, as it sounds, title process is really long, really expensive, and really confusing. there has been a really interesting startup in the space. They're also rather new, and they call it Spruce. Spruce is doing what Better did for mortgages for title insurance. They take the entire process, put it online, speed it up, and they say, actually, you know what, rather than spending a month on title insurance and making sure the title is good, let's try to do that in maybe a week or two. So they're really, really cool. They've been able to achieve a lot, and that's definitely something to look out for. They currently are in 11 states out of the country, and if you happen to be in one of the states that they operate in, it's definitely a cool option to go with. Okay, so finally, we've gone through the entire real estate transaction process, and we are able to buy a home. Now you have gone from searching for a home, financing it, all the boring stuff, getting a title and insurance, and now you can move into your home. Okay, let's take a second to breathe. That was long, it was confusing, it was tiring, and honestly, that was probably not pleasant. So that's exactly where Flare Agent steps in. We are an end-to-end process, which means we go from the start all the way to the finish, and we break down all these parts of the transactions into very distinct steps, such as search, financing, boring stuff, title, and the final move-in process. We put it online so that a buyer or a seller is able to stay on top of their tasks. And finally, we automate a lot of the steps, which involves the boring stuff, whereby a lot of documents are going back and forth, a lot of time is wasted in communication, and we're able to do this through the technology that we use and the software that we use. Therefore, we're able to bring down the time and cost of this entire process. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you are able to walk out of this being a lot more informed about what goes into buying a home. Feel free to hit me up with any questions you may have, and I am really excited to continue speaking with you.